As Barbadians across the island begin the process of re-registering for their national identification card, I sat down with Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology Davidson Ishmael to talk all about the new Trident ID, its digital capabilities, security features, design, and even the possibility of the card being used as a travel document.
Minister Ishmael, it's no secret that the previous Barbados ID presented challenges in terms of its use and durability. This new ID has been long anticipated. Tell us about the Trident ID.
You're absolutely right, Krystal. The current ID cards that many Bajans have, or all Bajans really have, has served its useful life. Unfortunately, it has come to a point in time when we have to make a change. The current ID is simply a piece of card with a picture on top of it, and then it is laminated. As you can imagine, this is something that over time, because of wear and tear in and out of wallets, in and out of purses, it usually develops creases, the edges of it usually fray, and then it becomes a document that can be easily, or an item that can be easily replicated. And we've had instances of persons actually using it in the case of fraud to be able to take out somebody's picture and to then pose as that individual. So the challenge with us is that we said with this new card that we're introducing, we have to ensure that it is not only a fancy, a new and fancy looking ID card, but we had to make sure that it was more secure, that it had security features built into it that would make it more difficult to replicate, and therefore it would reduce those instances of potential fraud and identity theft. The existing ID has been with us since 1979, and unfortunately it has become a source of embarrassment for many of our citizens who, even in doing business locally, have had to present it to whether a commercial bank, a retail outlet, etc., only to be met with some level of trepidation and resistance because of the state of that existing ID card. So it's even worse when you go overseas. I've heard many accounts of persons who would have gone overseas seeking to do business. Something as simple as seeking to get an international driver's license or being able to drive overseas for some period of time and presenting their ID card when asked, and then unfortunately being told, well, this is not acceptable because the card in and of itself does not have any security features built into it. So our objective in replacing the ID card was to ensure that we gave our people, gave our citizens an ID card that is more robust relative to its security features, that it can be used in many different contexts, and that also it will be able to last the length of time that it's supposed to last. So that is the whole objective of upgrading from our existing ID to that new physical PVC ID or plastic ID, much akin to that you see with your driver's license that we have now.
But beyond being a form of identification, the hope is that this new ID can also be used as a travel document. Can you share more on that?
That is the proposal. We have ensured that even as we sought to introduce this new ID, that we expanded its usability, we expanded its utility. And why we did that is because we recognize that, persons right now want to have access to one card that is useful, one card that can go across many different applications. And it's not just really about authenticating who you are anymore. It's about being able to use that card in many different spheres. And one of those spheres that people like to use their various documents is for travel. So we thought to ourselves, if we're going to be doing all of this to upgrade ID cards, we should try to ensure that we comply with as many international travel regulations and standards as possible so that the card can eventually be used as a travel document. Now, for it to be used as a travel document, it has to check many boxes. Something as simple as the photograph. The current photograph on the existing ID card is bigger than what is used or accepted by the ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization. It is bigger than what they would accept as being their standard. So we had to reformat the pictures, the photograph, and then in terms of lighting, in terms of the conditions around that person's image, all of these things go into or taken into consideration to ensure that it complies with ICAO standards. So that is one of the things actually that would have caused significant delay relative to the issuance of the cards, because for us to comply with that, we had to then building new infrastructure. It required coding. It required a whole host of other things on the back end to ensure that the card can comply with ICAO standards and ultimately be used as a travel document. Now, the long-term plan is that we will engage not only our CARICOM community, but also the international community, our source partners, the USA, UK, Canada, etc., wherever Bajans will go in the world. We now have to have those conversations with them so that they accept the card as a travel document. So we've done our part in terms of ensuring that it complies with international civil aviation standards and that it can be used as a travel document, but it's now really for those other conversations to take place. And we've already had good progress relative to CARICOM, of course, because they're our neighbors. They are very excited to see the card, even as we are. We will have further conversations, even through our Ministry of Tourism and our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We will have further conversations with other markets to ensure that they too are willing to accept our card as a travel document. So in the long-term vision, we are expecting that Bajans will be able to hop on a plane with just their ID card.
And perhaps one of the things Barbadians are most excited about is the digital element.
There's a digital component to it, and that's that's a game changer. You would have had for many years just a simple physical ID card that you held in your wallet and your purse and you presented when asked. Now we're moving to a stage now where we're actually creating a digital ID for our people. It's never been done before in Barbados, but it's not new to the world. There are many locations all across the globe that utilize digital IDs. So we're not doing something brand new here in Barbados. So I just want persons to understand that even though it's brand new to us, it's not brand new to the world to have both a physical ID and also a digital ID. So our card is now going to have those two components, those two sides, physical ID and your electronic ID or your digital ID, what we call the Trident ID. Now, that is something that's still in development, and we're expecting that within just a few weeks from now, even a few weeks after the first cards are actually collected by our citizens, that they will then be able to download an app onto their mobile device that will give them access to that whole world of digital eID. So it's a work in progress, and it is something that I want to underscore is totally optional. If you want to continue to use your ID card as you currently do, which is to use it as a way of just presenting and showing that you are Davidson Ishmael, that is fine. But if you are a person who wants to be able at some point in time to use your ID to authenticate who you are remotely, in other words, staying at home and being able to prove to a commercial bank, a retail outlet, the government of Barbados, that you are the person initiating the transaction, signing off on the transaction, saying that you are the person who is initiating something, that is where the digital ID will come in. Additional features that will come with the digital side of the ID card, and all of these are once again optional. So you're going to be able to opt in to what you want to be able to utilize your digital side of your ID for. We envision a future where persons will be able to use their ID card to effect e-commerce transactions. So being able to move funds from one place to another place, etc. Now the card of itself will not hold or store wealth on it, because we don't want your national ID card to be confused with a debit card or a credit card. That's not what it's about. It's going to continue to just be your ID card. But we want to increase the utility of it by allowing you to be able to use it for other things. So again, optionally, a person will be able to use this to go on the Transport Board bus, where you can load tokens onto the card, not money, but you'll be then to go in and get on the Transport Board bus. They will have a machine readable device that will be able to tap your card and your token is transferred from you to the Transport Board. And that is the type of future that we're looking for here in Barbados, where people can use their ID card for multiple reasons. Eventually, you should be able to interact with the government as well, using the same digital ID to authenticate yourself as the individual initiating the transaction, whether that be the payment of your water bill, whether that be the payment of BRA taxes, whatever it may be. So some of those e-commerce transactions will come down the line. So in other words, they're not going to be immediately available when you receive your card 4 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now. But during the course of our progression with the digital side of this card and the development thereof, and of course based on demand, because I'm sure there are many Barbadians who would like to see this card be used for this or be used for that. So as we hear those demands, we will then see how we can develop them into the ID card so that it becomes a really useful tool in the hands of our citizens. And I want to bring people's attention back to the fact that other countries, they do everything digitally. They interact with their government fully online. and they use their digital ID to be able to do that. You have a digital ID that says you're a citizen John Brown, and that ID is used across every interaction with the government of that country. And this is where Barbados is going. We must embrace this future because we're now in a digital world. We're no longer in this analog space of writing on paper and signing stuff on, by hand. We're now in a new world, a new era, and we want every Barbadian to jump on board. And for those who aren't ready to jump on board, you can continue to use your physical ID the same way you use it right now.
With any new digital technology, one of the questions that arises is security. What are the security features of this new ID?
One of the key things that you will find with the new ID, one of the physical features that you will see will be a chip. And many of our citizens have become very accustomed to this chip and pin technology. Chip and pin technology is utilized within the commercial banks when they come to their debit and credit cards, because it is actually right now one of the leading forms of securing digital information and data when it comes to cards. So you have a chip on this physical card that actually keeps and stores information on it, and you have a pin that guards that information. So in other words, the only person who should have access to that data, or the only person who should have access to be able to release that data, is the person who holds the pin. So that's the first layer of security when it comes to your digital ID. It comes with a pin. You're the person who's going to pin it. You're the person who's going to choose that 4-digit pin, assign it to the card that says that I am the person who is authorizing this information to be shared with entity A or entity B. That's the first level of security. So your data can't just be released just like that. Nobody's going to just be able to pick up your card and go and stick it into a machine and have all your information relative to who you are. Because, and I want to make it clear here as well, the data that's stored on your chip, that's stored on the actual card of itself, is the same information that's on your ID card right now. There may be some additional information that people will opt into as time goes by, but it's really going to be your name, your height, your date of birth. It's going to be basic information. It's just that now it's going to be in a format that can be used through machine readable apparatus. So it's not something that's going to have the world's secrets on it. So we're protecting it still, but it's not going to have a whole ton of information on it that is going to be, top secret. So once a person pins their card, that is the first level of protection, the first level of security. There's a second layer. If you now, like many of our Barbadian citizens will do, if you now want to be able to use this digital ID to authenticate who you are remotely, and at that point in time, use it to say, I am authorizing a transaction, whatever that transaction may be. And I have a big vision for the card that someday that someone will be in the diaspora in Canada or the UK or Switzerland or in the Netherlands or wherever they are. And they're a Barbadian citizen with their digital ID card, and they want to effect a transfer of, let's say, land from themselves to their daughter, to their child, to their mother, to whoever, that they can actually digitally sign on their documents or digitally authenticate that they are who they are without having to physically fly back to Barbados to be shown and presented to whoever it is that's doing the transaction. They can do it by authenticating themselves using their digital ID. Now, it's not just a PIN that will be needed at that point in time, but if you're affixing your digital signature to say, I am authorizing this transaction, that is now a second layer of authentication that needs to take place. And for that, we've built in a second PIN. Now, this PIN now has 5 digits. So for you to just say, I am Davidson Ishmael, you just release your information to a commercial bank, retail outlet, you put in your PIN, your 4-digit PIN. Everybody's accustomed to that. If you are now remotely and digitally seeking to sign on documents and authenticate your presence for large transactions, there's now a second PIN, a 5-digit PIN. So your information is as secure as it possibly can be. It is the latest and best technology, chip and PIN, that we are utilizing for your national ID card.
You mentioned plenty of security features, but Barbadians also looked at the aesthetic of the card. Some love the design, but others do not.
everybody's cup of tea is different, right? Some people like extra sugar, some people like no sugar, right? Some people like lots of salt, some people don't like salt at all. You won't be able to please every single Barbadian with anything that you issue. That's a fact, and we know this. What I can say to you is that I've heard a lot more people saying that they appreciate the design than I've heard the one or two that don't. And I believe that when people actually physically get the card in their hand and they actually get to see it and they start to manipulate it and feel it and really see those features shining and looking at them in the face, I think that a lot of people are going to really appreciate the thought that went into this. And I will say here that there was a young Barbadian person, a young female Barbadian, would have designed the card. And this is something that should give us immense pride as well, because it's one of our own that designed it. So whether I like it or I think it could be a little bit more blue or a little less yellow, at the end of the day, it is one of our cards. It's going to be ours, and it's going to be ours for a long time to come.
With the pilot project in its early phases, Barbadians already have queries as it relates to the expiration of the card, renewal, and especially the replacement fee. Can you provide clarity on these?
Yeah, it is something that is causing some confusion in the public because persons are unfortunately making synonymous replacement with renewal, and those are two different things. If you currently have an ID card and for whatever reason it has not passed that 10-year mark, which is a standard for ID cards should be replaced every 10 years. That is a standard that has always existed. It is not a standard that we adhere to in Barbados because I myself have an ID that I got when I was 16 years old, and I am a couple moons past 16 now, and I have never changed my ID. I mean, I still look the same, some would say. But unfortunately, I have never changed it. Now, it is a standard. 10 years is the marker. We have not adhered to that, but it is what we should adhere to. The new ID card will have the same standard. Every 10 years, you should renew your ID card. Your features change, your characteristics change as time progresses, as you age, you mature. So it is a standard that every 10 years, you should renew that photograph. Your information is still the same, of course. Your name is probably still the same. You may still be the same height, but of course, and the same complexion, of course. But you probably have changed in some way, so the photo needs to be updated. That is a renewal of your card. It is not a replacement. If during the course of that 10-year period, for whatever reason, you lose your card, it is broken, somebody runs over it, it is stolen, house fire, etc., and you need to come back to the government of Barbados to say, please reissue me with a new ID card, that's a replacement. That's a different process. So we're saying to Barbadians, and there currently is, as many Barbadians know, a fee for replacement of ID cards.
But, Minister Ishmael, this fee in particular is significantly higher. Why is that?
Well, you know, it is a whole new technology. I would have just described to you that this is a brand new system that we're dealing with. You have before a piece of card with a photograph stuck onto a ping pong, as we know, stuck onto it with laminate over it. You know, you're comparing that with a PVC card that has security features that I can't even go into now. There's so many security features that are built into the physical makeup of the card, and then there's so many security features that go into the data protection side of the card as well. So it is not as simple a replacement as what was there before. So I want persons to understand that yes, there is an increase in the cost, and of course some persons may find some reservation with having to pay that additional increase, but it is only in instances where you need to replace it. It's not in instances where you need to renew. So for those persons who have held their card for the last 20 or 30 years, hold this one for the next 10 years as well. And when you get to that 10-year mark, the government of Barbados will be in a position, I believe at that time, to just renew that card for you free of cost. But if you have to, in between there, replace it, it's a charge that you're going to have to bear.
Now, this new ID card was promised to Barbadians for quite some time, even before you took over this ministry. Why has this taken so long?
Well, I'm sure that all of my people in Barbados understand that if you want to do something right, sometimes it takes some time. We did not want to rush this process. We have a saying in Barbados, if you rush the brush, you spill the paint. And haste makes waste. So we have tried our best to ensure that we check all boxes, that we cross all T's, we dot all I's, because this is an entirely new system of managing the identities of our people. And when I say that, we have actually passed new legislation. The Barbados Identity Management Act was passed to support what we're doing right now. So legislation takes time. We're talking about a whole new way of identifying who Barbadians are, not just physically, but digitally, that you can now say from wherever you are, and you can say to the government of Barbados, whether it be you're interacting with the NIS, whether you're interacting with the Welfare Department, whether you're interacting with BRA, whether you're interacting with any agency, you can now physically or digitally authenticate that you are Davidson Ishmael. So for us, that is something that we wanted to take very seriously. We want to take our time with it. We want to ensure that the security behind it is robust and resilient. And that led to us actually enacting other pieces of legislation, like the data protection legislation as well, that would have been put in force, I think in 2020 or 2021, if I'm not mistaken, but recently. And we have put all of those things in place to protect the infrastructure behind the new ID card that Bajans will have in their hands and in their purses and in their wallets very soon. In addition to that, projects of this size and this scale, they tend to have many challenges. As you start to do one thing, you realize that you have to comply with some standard. And if we want to comply with international standards, sometimes you have to go through many different things. You have to put many different systems in place. You have to, things that you might not have thought of at the beginning, you have to now go and put in place so that you are able to ensure that you meet the standards and that you are compliant with all those international requirements. So it may seem like it has taken long, but for a project of this size, I will tell you, Krystal, there are many of our Caribbean neighbors who are impressed with how quickly we have gone to this stage of being able to issue to our people a government-backed ID card and an ID system that authenticates who they are physically and also digitally.
How soon is very soon? We're currently in the re-registration process, but when can Barbadians expect that new Trident ID in hand?
Yeah, we're at that stage now where there's a bit of excitement in the air. Persons have already begun the re-registration process. We have public servants with this first phase of the exercise. We're calling it a pilot phase, where we're actually allowing all public servants to be able to go through the re-registration exercise over these 2 weeks. Started last week. This is now the second week of that registration exercise. It is going very well by all reports. We've had some hiccups along the way, but we wanted to do this test to be able to iron out those hiccups. So when we go live to the public, which is expected to happen from June 27th, we're expecting that those individuals of the public will be able to go forward and start to re-register themselves. Now, there's a process. You don't re-register today and get your card tomorrow. The card, as I said to you before, it has so many security features, it has so many different capabilities, it has to be produced. So there is, at this point in time, a window of about 6 weeks between when you re-register and when you can expect to collect your card. We're going to do everything within our power to reduce that time frame, but we're expecting that 6 weeks will be the widest margin within which a person may have to wait to collect their card. So at this point in time, with the re-registration process starting last week, we're expecting that within the month of July, that persons will receive physical cards in hand. The first set of Barbadians will receive their cards in their hands, and it will continue to flow after that, of course, in intervals and in waves. We would have seen the documents that went out and have been circulating, our brochure, etc., that would have spoken about the alphabetical system that's being used. So from June 27th, we're going to have A and B being registered for about 2-week interval, and then it flows from there in 2-week intervals. So persons just have to just hold tight a little bit more in terms of their excitement. They have to hold that down a bit. And I'm sure that when your last name is due, you will go forward to the various registration centers all over the island and even online and be able to re-register yourself. And within weeks after that, you'll be receiving your physical card.
And speaking of excitement, how excited are you to be the minister to bring this new ID to the Barbadian public?
I'm extremely excited, and I'm also humbled because it is a big honor, right? We're talking about replacing something that has been around since 1979, out with the old, in with the new. And I have my cabinet colleagues who always call me the new kid on the block. So it is only fitting that the new kid on the block brings a new ID to the people of Barbados. I want to obviously give respect and honor to Minister Kay McConney, who was the previous minister for this ministry and who really started the legwork and put a lot of the foundational things in place to ensure that we were able to get to this stage. And And that's what, we understand in government, that this is not a sprint only, but it is a relay. And she passed on the baton to me. I had a fine wicket to roll on, and so far so good. And I think that we're rolling smoothly from here now. And I think the process is going to be good. And I think all Barbadians will be pleased. I am immensely proud of my team here at the ministry, who has been laboring night and day. And if I had to tell you the amount of hours and the amount of meetings and the amount of discussions that we've had to be able to get to this point, we're all breathing a little bit easier, but we are still holding our breath a little bit, because we know that we are not yet past the finish line, and we will not be satisfied until every single Barbadian, whether here or abroad, has their card in their hand and they're pleased with what they have.
Minister Ishmael, thank you for your time.
Thank you as well.